The story begins by depicting three bullies from a school, with a student named Miles as the leader of the group. They go to school to bully other students they consider weak. One of the students who is always the target of their aggression is a chubby young boy named Jimmy. Even though Miles has beaten up Jimmy many times before, Jimmy never finds the courage to fight back. At school, Jimmy has two friends named Andy and Bobby who always support him. Not only that, but he also has very caring and loving parents. One day, Jimmy and his friends encounter Miles and his gang on their way to school. Miles and his friends demand $100 from Jimmy, which is clearly excessive for a boy from a simple and poor family. Even though Jimmy tells them he doesn't have that much money, Miles doesn't care and forces him to give him $100. In addition to Jimmy, Miles also frequently bullies Bobby, who behaves in a feminine manner. Jimmy tries to console and calm Bobby after Miles humiliates him in front of the class. Jimmy invites his friends to eat at the school cafeteria. Andy and Bobby are surprised that Jimmy can eat a lot of food without stopping. Despite eating a lot, he never mocks him for his big appetite. Later, Andy and Bobby suggest to Jimmy that he should try dating a girl from their school named Adrian, because they often see her secretly glancing at Jimmy when they eat in the cafeteria. Shortly after that, Miles shows up and sits next to Jimmy, demanding $100 once again. One of the students who is bothered by Miles' presence asks him not to make noise and to leave the cafeteria. Seeing that he is reprimanded by students he considers weak, he responds by shouting and insulting the student. However, a student who is older and stronger than Miles decides to teach him a lesson for disturbing others while they were eating. In an instant, Miles loses his courage and immediately leaves. After school, Miles confronts Jimmy again and forces him once more to give him $100. However, Jimmy insists that he doesn't have that much money and doesn't owe Miles anything, so he shouldn't have to pay him for any reason. Fed up with Jimmy, Miles beats him on the side of the road. He only stops beating Jimmy when an elderly man arrives and threatens to report Miles to the police. Miles gets in his car and speeds away. The old man decides to help Jimmy and takes him home to tend to his injuries. The man introduces himself as Action. While at Action's home, Jimmy discovers that he was a world champion heavyweight boxer. Jimmy then asks Action to train him to become a boxer so that he can fight Miles and stop the harassment. The old man is willing to help Jimmy beat Miles but says he's too old to be his trainer. Action says he will ask his friends to help with the training. Afterward, Action takes Jimmy home and tells his parents about what happened. Jimmy's parents are very grateful that Action took care of Jimmy and brought him home safely. They immediately give Jimmy permission to box with Action. His parents even accompany Jimmy to Manny's boxing gym. Action tells Manny about Jimmy's troubles, and Manny agrees to help Jimmy as long as he is serious and doesn't give up, as boxing training is tough and requires many sacrifices. After being accepted, Jimmy starts practicing boxing regularly with Manny, with Action personally monitoring his progress at each training session. Jimmy then confides in Action about Miles, who had forced him to give him money many times. Action suggests to Jimmy that he should promise Miles twice the amount, $200, on the condition that he pays it within a month. Action believes that Jimmy will be well prepared to defeat Miles on the day of payment, so he won't have to give him the $200. The next day, Jimmy does what Action told him when Miles approaches him again to intimidate him. Miles hesitates for a moment but ultimately accepts Jimmy's offer and makes him promise to have $200 in a month. For a while, Jimmy can relax because Miles won't bother him for money. However, when Jimmy trains with Manny in the afternoon, he seems tired and unmotivated. Jimmy claims he's exhausted. However, he can't fool Manny, as his professionalism allows him to understand that Jimmy isn't physically and mentally drained. Manny then takes him home and asks Jimmy why he wasn't in the mood for training that day. Jimmy responds, claiming he feels tired and thinks the training isn't yielding any results. He still feels weak and incapable of defending himself. Hearing Jimmy discouraged, Action tries to cheer him up, saying that no effort is wasted, and whatever the result, he will learn a valuable lesson from his sacrifices. When he gets home, his father notices his losing enthusiasm for training. His father doesn't force him to continue but gives him the freedom to choose. However, he tells Jimmy that one day he will be able to teach his own children how to defend themselves so they won't be bullied like he was. After pondering his father's words, Jimmy's fighting spirit returns, and he's determined to train seriously. The next day, Miles and his group once again intimidate Jimmy and his friends. They don't hesitate to physically assault Bobby in front of everyone. Jimmy then approaches Bobby, who is crying, and tries to console him. Bobby says he's desperate because they can't do anything against Miles and his friends. Jimmy disagrees and tells Bobby that he has a way to beat Miles and stop their harassment. When he gets home, Jimmy heads to Manny's boxing gym on a bicycle. While he usually had Action with him, as the boxing gym is quite far away, Action is delighted that Jimmy is excited to start boxing training again. In fact, he's so excited that Jimmy accidentally hits Manny and falls to the ground. Instead of being upset, Manny is happy that Jimmy is taking boxing seriously once more. Day by day, Jimmy trains with ambition and passion. Manny makes Jimmy's training more challenging and also teaches him mixed martial arts. Meanwhile, Action trains Jimmy's mindset, offering him advice and tricks to develop his fighting spirit. In the meantime, at school, Jimmy tells Andy about the boxing training he's been going through to defeat Miles. At the same time, Adrian approaches Jimmy, and the two decide to go out. Adrian and Jimmy attend a party at a friend's house. After discussing many things, they realize they are very compatible and connected with each other. During the gathering, Eddie, one of Miles' bullies, irritates Jimmy and Adrian by insulting them. However, Jimmy, who is now more confident, gathers the courage to stand up to him and make him leave. Time passes, and the day comes when Jimmy must fulfill his promise to Miles and give him the money. However, Jimmy is determined not to let Miles beat him anymore. That morning, he wakes up with a surge of confidence and a chilling determination. When he arrives at school, Miles immediately approaches him and threatens to hurt his friends if he decides to break his promise and run after school. While in the restroom, Jimmy meets a guy who introduces himself as Vinny and learns about his history with Miles. Vinny, who knows that Jimmy boxes at Manny's gym, encourages him and wishes him luck. Unbeknownst to them, Eddie, who was in the restroom, overheard their conversation and reported to Miles that Jimmy probably doesn't want to pay. At Miles' orders, Eddie then calls a criminal known as Glassjaw Billy to come to the school and beat up Jimmy. Rumors of an impending fight between Jimmy and Miles spread quickly throughout the school, drawing the attention of students who want to know who will emerge victorious. With determination, Jimmy confronts Miles. Miles, who already knows that Jimmy won't give him the money, plans to beat him with the help of Glassjaw. However, Vinny acts faster and, with the help of his friends, neutralizes Glassjaw, so Miles inevitably has to fight Jimmy alone. The fight begins. At first, Jimmy struggles. However, he doesn't give up. Determined to end the harassment, Jimmy manages to dodge Miles' attacks and lands a solid punch to his face. Jimmy is no longer the chubby boy who was beaten by everyone. Now, he can defend himself and is determined to become even stronger to protect the weak from injustice. Seeing that Miles is losing, his bully friends decide to help him beat Jimmy. However, Andy and Bobby decide to intervene and fight the bullies so that Jimmy can defeat Miles and his friends. After defeating Jimmy, he orders Miles not to harm anyone at school anymore, but Miles seems not to care. On the other hand, Action, who witnessed everything from behind the crowd, seems very proud because, despite becoming the strongest in school, Jimmy still has a good heart. It appears that the fight between Jimmy and Miles has gone viral after appearing on the internet. The video even airs on a local television channel, making Jimmy's actions against the bullies a topic of conversation in the community. Everyone honors Jimmy's courage in standing up to the bullies, and his parents are proud because their son can now defend himself and is no longer bullied. The film ends by showing Jimmy, Andy, Bobby, and Adrian, who are now more confident and have become the center of attention at school after their success in defeating a group of bullies who had been bothering everyone.